Hello, everyone, and welcome to another day in AI in real estate. As you already know, here is where I share practical, real use case where you can save a lot of time by doing more and better with less. So let's jump into today's use case. And today's use case is quite unique. I was recently invited to showcase live how to do a full development underwriting, and not just any underwriting. This was like a large scale, complex site that could absorb different asset classes, different product types, and even different phases. And for this use case, I used Leni. Leni is an agentic AI that combines its own mathematical models with the leading LLMs and orchestrates between them to give you the best answer, the best and accurate answer. And you don't need to babysit Leni all the way. Once you give the task, it will perform it end to end without babysitting, without any questions. So let's jump in. So what I did here, I uploaded this document. It's like a SIM or OM with a lot of information. And we can scroll down a little bit. So it talks about the JV structure of the sites and the objectives, companies, what they're looking for, and gives the location, uh, brings a lot of good information about the site itself. And the first thing I asked was to summarize. So give me a detailed summary of the case, including ownership structure, context, key constraints, request deliverables, objectives, etc. So this is the first part of the summary, the lands, the site itself, ownership structure, what are the roles of each one of the players here, the planning and zoning framework, market and demographic context, and some key constraints and considerations, requested deliverables for this use case, for this case competition, and the objectives. And then gave me a summary in a Word file. But then I asked to go further. So based on the materials and links provided, do a full market research, including drivers and demographics for each possible type of product there. So I gave like a couple of options like condos, multifamily, office, and said like everything, try to see if it fits or not. Give me a market research for this and provide a recommendation for what type of product should be built there and if there's a market fit for that and the investment fees behind each of them. So let's see. It gave a mixed use recommendation. So, and then a full market research and investment recommendation here. But before I jump into the file, what does it say? Like the long run growth tailwinds, housing delivery target, structural shifting towards apartments, demographic fundamentals, senior trend, node, etc. What are the project types that it analyzed? So condos, purpose-built rental like multifamily, office, retail, student housing. There is a school with 7,500 students nearby, senior housing, and recommendation. So with all of that, I saw it here. And how it got to the answer and all the sources that brought to that. And this was the file, a 19-page market report about the site, what it should be, the executive summary, and all the sections that are really needed for a full market research, all the executive summary, constraints, the JV objectives, market research by product type. So for condos, for multifamily, for office, retail, student housing, senior housing, including senior housing, which is quite interesting. And what is the recommended mixed use program? And I'll go back to here. So here's the recommended, but then I realized though he talked about student housing, it wasn't mentioning here. And again, there's a college with 7,500 students nearby, so why not add a student housing? So next step, I asked to do like, is it worth adding a student housing component to this? And again, it gave me the answer saying what the materials actually say and if it's worth adding it. And actually now the AI came and said, yes, it is worth including a student housing component, but it should be positioned as a flexible student compatible rental. Suite style apartment that can lease to both students and non-students rather than a highly specialized dorm only concept. So here's the pro forma, super interesting because it's well structured the way I asked it for. So I have the key dates, the program, rental market rents. There are some placeholders for things that it got like proximity, but not exactly because some of the product types we didn't have like a full comparable or list of comps to benchmark these against. But even though like the commercial leasing, hard costs, development charts, financing assumptions, and all the timelines for each of the phases, property tax and OPEX assumptions. And then I got the executive summary, uh, cash flows for each of the phases, um, phase two and phase three, all the returns, source and uses, debt, operating pro forma, checks and balances, and all the fixes that he did, the log of that. So again, I thought it was super interesting. And from that, I asked a couple of follow-up questions. So based on the density, uh, proposed, and this was the last density we came up with, propose a number of buildings that match the total areas, estimate how many buildings each phase and each product may have in order to match the total density for each phase and each product. So it gave the building allocation for all of that, all the massing for it, uh, the like the idea of the building, the phase it's gonna be built, and all the notes on that. And then I asked to prepare an executive level 11-page PowerPoint presentation that explains and justifies the preferred development option for the subject lands. And this proposal should include the following: the cover slide, property description, investment fees, market overview, product mix, master plan and massing, risk and mitigants, main assumptions, returns, profit, etc., etc., and a description outlining the number of buildings, etc. And I finally got our final answer, and here you can see how he got. So again, I didn't give a lot of, guidance in terms of colors or formatting. I just wanted to have those sections. And for each one of them, I got my executive summary, property and site highlights, planning and density fit, how should be planned, like the mix of residential and office and retail, a market overview and demographics, residential market, the office and retail market there, program and product mix, master plan and massing, phasing timeline and approval. They gave me the whole timeline of the phases, risks and mitigants and financial summary. Okay, the source of capital and uses, and some appendix for all of that. So as you can see, I would say we spent, like Leni spent, I would say between like an hour and a half and 2 hours. I spent maybe 20 minutes reading and asking the questions to understand the full case, a highly complex case. I could understand the market there, what's like the prototype, the master plan I should be aiming for. And of course, if I had like a little more time, I would be going back and forth, suggesting some areas, understand a little bit more, coming back with this with new ideas, and would refine it till like a really good and final product. And that's what I say in AI. Like this exercise back then, I did a similar exercise 7 years ago for a case competition, and it took me a week to get to the same level of understanding that it took me a couple of minutes here. I would say like for me a couple of minutes, for Lane a couple like 1 2 hours here. And that's the beauty of all of that. Now, with all the time I saved with this, I can actually start thinking about what else? What differentiator can I add to this? Are there any other thing that I haven't considered? I can ask Leni again. I can go back and forth with AI to bring a lot more depth, a lot more ideas, and outcomes for this. And I hope this was helpful for you. This was a really fun exercise for me going through all this process from the beginning to the end, saving a lot of time that I would have spent otherwise. And I hope to see you again here in AI in real estate.